Welcome back to the deep dive. It feels like just yesterday, almost, February 2024, law enforcement worldwide was announcing this huge win, Operation Kronos.
Huge news at the time.
Yeah, and they really thought they'd severely wounded, maybe even crippled, the Lockbit ransomware group. Big name.
The biggest.
But, well, if there's one lesson we keep learning in cybersecurity, it's that this top-tier digital crime, it doesn't really die, does it?
No, it really doesn't. It retreats, it retools, and then it comes back, often stronger.
With a vengeance, exactly.
And that's the hard truth here. The intelligence reports are confirming it now. We started hearing whispers, maybe early September 2025 about a Lockbit resurgence.
Right.
And now we have reports confirming active deployment of Lockbit version 5.0.
5.0 already.
Yeah. And this isn't just like a simple comeback. It looks like a real operational evolution. We're talking a cross-platform nightmare that's really designed to cripple the backbone of modern business, that virtual infrastructure.
Okay, so that's our mission today then, to unpack this.
That's exactly it. We need to unpack the specific, frankly, terrifying intelligence on this new variant, but also, critically, we need to zoom out a bit.
Look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, examine the whole professionalized infrastructure that lets these groups operate. The ransomware as a service, the RaaS economy, and the illicit financial systems that fuel it all.
The money trail.
The money trail. How do they absorb these huge law enforcement hits like Kronos and just keep going?
So yeah, this deep dive, it's moving from just the technical threat of 5.0 to the bigger systemic challenge that you're facing right now.
And it's incredibly timely, isn't it? We're wrapping up October 2025, which is Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Perfect timing, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the sophistication we're seeing here just hammers home that need for constant vigilance. Which actually brings me to our sponsor. We really want to thank www.cisomarketplace.com.
Great resource. They've been amazing supporting us in keeping the cybersecurity community informed. And, when the threat evolves this fast, you absolutely need that preparedness. It's just non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
So, okay, the analysis today, it's drawn mostly from public intelligence reports, right? And specific threat analysis on 5.0.
Correct. Public intel, deep threat analysis on the 5.0 variants themselves, and also current reports looking at the sheer scale and focus of ransomware targeting critical infrastructure just this year in 2025. All right, let's dive in. Section 1, Lockbit 5.0, a new level of technical sophistication.
Okay, let's start with that persistence. Operation Kronos, that was a big deal. Coordinated global takedown.
It is significant. Yeah.
Yet here we are, barely 18 months later, talking about Lockbit 5.0, apparently resurfacing right around their 6th anniversary, September 2025.
That's the timeline, yeah.
So what does this quick, successful relaunch tell us about maybe the flaws in relying only on law enforcement disruption? Is that enough to contain this RaaS ecosystem?
Well, it tells us it's definitely not enough on its own. These disruption operations, they tend to target the symptoms, right? The visible infrastructure, maybe a few key players they can identify.
That's the surface stuff.
Exactly. They don't really hit the underlying disease, which is the highly profitable business model itself. This RaaS structure, it's almost fundamentally anti-fragile.
Anti-fragile? How so?
It's distributed, it's specialized, different people doing different jobs, and it's incredibly profitable. So you take out one piece, the system adapts, replaces it. But, what's really concerning about Lockbit 5.0 isn't just that they're back, it's the technical direction they've taken.
Sure.
Analysts have confirmed variants targeting Windows, sure, but also Linux, and this is the really critical one, ESXi virtualization environments.
Ah, the virtualization layer.
Yeah. And this commitment to hitting all these platforms simultaneously across the most common enterprise operating systems, it confirms their strategy. They're aiming for, total enterprise-wide paralysis.
Hitting everything at once.
Right.
That feels like a major escalation. Let's dig into the Windows variant first then, because the defense evasion techniques you mentioned, the sources outline them as, almost disturbingly clever. We're way past simple file encryption here.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. If you're an analyst, an incident responder looking at this code, the first thing that jumps out is the heavy obfuscation.
Meaning it's hard to read, hard to understand what it's doing.
Extremely hard. The Windows variant uses significant packing. It basically functions as just a loader. It decrypts the actual malicious part, the PE binary, only when it's running in memory.
Okay, so it's not sitting there obviously on the disk.
Nope. And it loads it using something called DLL reflection methods. The whole point is to make static analysis examining the code without running it, incredibly difficult.
Which forces the good guys into dynamic analysis, running it to see what happens.
Exactly, which is much slower, much more resource intensive, and frankly, more dangerous to do in a controlled environment.
Right? It stops you in your tracks, delays the diagnosis when every second counts. For a typical IR team racing the clock, how much time does that extra layer, that in-memory stuff, actually buy the attackers?
Oh, it buys them critical hours,
Huh.
sometimes even half a day or more, depending on how sophisticated the victim's defenses and analysis capabilities are. And time, as you know, is everything in ransomware.
Yeah.
The longer that encryption runs wild before it's started and stopped, the higher the chance of just total compromise. But honestly, the even more alarming feature for security teams is the anti-forensics part. The stuff designed to blind your automated defenses.
Okay, that's the two-event right patching you mentioned. For listeners maybe not deep in malware analysis daily, can you, visualize that? What does that actually do to a security team's dashboard? What goes dark? Okay, think of a Deborah event tracing for Windows as the main microphone Windows uses internally. It records every significant action: file access, process starts, critical system changes. It's the fundamental source of truth for almost all modern EDR endpoint detection and response tools. So it's the eyes and ears, pretty much, yeah. Lockbit 5.0 finds this to-event write function deep in the operating system's kernel memory, and it literally overwrites the start of it with a single machine instruction. 0 by C3. 0 by C3. What does that mean?
It just means return.
Yeah.
Instantly. So any program, including your fancy EDR sensor, tries to log an event using this function. It hits that 0 by C3 and immediately stops, returns without doing anything. No logging happens.
Wow. So they aren't just, picking the lock. They're cutting the security camera wires before they even touch the door.
That's a perfect analogy. Yeah. No log, no evidence, no alert trigger. It blinds the security mechanism right at the source.
Okay. That's nasty. And they don't stop there. They're thorough. Besides disabling event tracing, the malware actively terminates security-related services. It uses this clever trick. It hashes the names of 63 common services. Think antivirus agents, backup services, right? The things that might stop it.
Yeah, and compares those hashes against a hard-coded list. If it matches, bang, service terminated. Then, after the encryption is done, just to be absolutely sure, it wipes all the system event logs clean using the standard ftclearlog API.
It's a really thorough cleanup job.
Okay.
And then the final piece of evasion, you mentioned the file extensions, moving away from predictable ones. That kills traditional signature detection too, right?
It absolutely does. Older ransomware often used a standard .lockbit or .encrypted or something obvious.
Yeah, you could build rules for that.
Right. Lockbit 5.0 uses randomized, unique 16-character file extensions for every single encrypted file. So if your main defense relies on spotting known file signatures or those predictable extensions, this payload is basically invisible.
Wow.
So you combine that heavy obfuscation, the kernel-level API patching to blind EDR, the service termination, the log wiping, and these unique file extensions. What you get is a highly refined, multi-stage stealth weapon. It's built for speed, but also for staying hidden as long as possible.
Okay, that level of defense evasion, the stealth, it really suggests these operators are highly motivated to avoid detection. But is that technical refinement the most significant evolution in 5.0?
Yeah.
Or is this ESXi threat you mentioned actually the bigger game changer, the bigger risk for businesses?
I'd say the ESXi threat is, without a doubt, the bigger game changer. Definitely in terms of potential systemic impact. The Windows variant, yeah, it's sophisticated, it's nasty.
Yeah.
But the ESXi variant, that elevates the threat from, server failure to potentially data center collapse.
Because ESXi runs everything else.
Exactly. VMware's ESXi is pretty much the industry standard for virtualization infrastructure. It hosts the virtual machines, the VMs, that are at the heart of almost every modern corporate data center. They run everything from internal apps to massive customer databases.
And the math here is just brutal, isn't it? You hit the host, the physical machine running ESXi. You don't just hit one server.
Nope. You potentially hit hundreds of critical interconnected services running as VMs on that single host.
Wow.
Yeah. The Lockbit ESXi variant is specifically tailored for this. It knows how to operate in that environment. So a single successful payload execution on that ESXi host, it can mean the immediate simultaneous encryption of potentially hundreds of virtual machines.
Hundreds at once.
Hundreds at once. In an instant, an entire corporate virtualization infrastructure can just be paralyzed. And we're seeing other big groups prioritize this too. Play Ransomware, Quillen. They also have ESXi variants. It confirms that the specific hypervisor platform is now like the top prize for ransomware gangs.
Okay, this definitely moves the conversation beyond just one company's problem and squarely into, well, national resilience, right? The reports for 2025, they paint a pretty grim picture of ransomware not just being a nuisance, but a systemic threat that's deliberately targeting the infrastructure that keeps society running. The statistics are kind of horrifying.
They really are. Globally, the sources tracked 4,701 ransomware incidents just between January and September 2025. That's a significant jump from the year before.
Almost 5,000 in 9 months.
Yeah, but it's the focus that's really got security analysts worried. Fully half of those attacks, 2,332 incidents, hit critical sectors.
Half. What sectors are we talking?
We're talking manufacturing, which hit supply chains hard, healthcare, obviously dealing with life and death systems, energy grids, transportation networks, financial institutions.
The essentials.
The absolute essentials. And that focus represents a 34% year-over-year increase in attacks, specifically targeting these crucial industries.
34% increase. And the U.S. is still the main target?
Sure.
Still the bullseye? Yep. The U.S. remains the global epicenter, accounting for about 21% of all these global attacks. It really highlights that dual motivation you sometimes see. Maximize profit by hitting wealthy, digitally mature markets, but also maybe strategically disrupting key infrastructure. So it's profit and potential chaos rolled into one.
It seems that way. These groups operate with, frankly, strategic clarity. They maximize profit where they can, but they're also clearly testing the resilience of industries that are central to national security. And when these critical sectors get hit, the downstream effects are just massive loss of public confidence, supply chain chaos, severe operational problems.
Okay, to make this really tangible, let's talk about some real-world examples cited in the sources, because this isn't theoretical, right? This is happening right now, hitting essential services.
Absolutely. Look at the energy sector incident reported just recently, October 28th. A group called Everest claimed they hacked Sweden's power grid operator, Svenska Kraftnät.
Sweden's power grid.
Yeah. They claimed to steal 280 gigs of data. I mean, this isn't just stealing customer lists. It's a direct threat to providing basic national infrastructure. You're talking about using electricity stability as a bargaining chip.
That's terrifying. Okay, what about manufacturing? That's often where sensitive intellectual property lives.
Right. And look at the Quilin ransomware attack against Chinup Technology Cup, Ltd. They're a Taiwanese manufacturer of industrial machinery. Quilin didn't just encrypt, they highlighted the industrial espionage angle. They specifically bragged about stealing sensitive design drawings of proprietary tech systems, alongside financial documents.
So hitting them where it hurts most,
Yeah.
their unique designs.
Exactly. And then, circling right back to that ESXi danger we were discussing, the attack by the Play ransomware group on X-Metro PowerHost. They're a web infrastructure provider.
So they host stuff for other companies.
Yeah, exactly. Play didn't just hit their standard servers. They specifically zeroed in on and encrypted their VMware ESX servers and their demand. 2 Bitcoins per impacted customer hosted on those servers.
Per customer. What did that add up to?
The calculated total ransom demand for that single incident was reportedly staggering, something around $140 million.
Whoa.
Yeah, it just demonstrates the astronomical financial leverage these groups gain when they successfully target shared virtualization infrastructure like ESXi.
Okay, hearing you lay out that virtualization threat, the scale, the leverage, what's maybe the single biggest misunderstanding an average C-suite executive might have about the risk of an ESXi attack compared to, say, just a regular file server getting hit by ransomware?
I think the biggest misunderstanding is probably the concept of isolation, or maybe false confidence and redundancy. An executive might think, okay, if that server goes down, we have backups, we have failover.
We plan for server failure.
Yeah. But they often don't grasp that the ESXi attack leverages the very consolidation that virtualization offers against them. If the attacker encrypts the underlying host storage volume where all those VMs live, you're not just taking one server offline.
You're taking everything on that host offline.
Everything.
Yeah.
You're essentially wiping out that entire section of the data center environment, including potentially all the failover and redundancy measures that were built into those VMs hosted on that machine. It becomes a single point of truly catastrophic failure.
Okay, the sheer complexity of Lockbit 5.0, cross-platform, advanced anti-forensics. It makes you realize this can't be just a few hackers in a basement anymore, right? This requires organization, structure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The ability of groups like Lockbit to orchestrate these kinds of sophisticated, high-volume attacks consistently, It's entirely built on the ransomware as a service model. We really have to stop thinking of them just as hackers and start seeing them as, well, highly structured, pretty efficient criminal enterprises.
The sources describe RANBots as the brutal and efficient Uber of this new economy.
Mhm.
That feels incredibly apt. It really democratizes the whole extortion process, doesn't it? Lowers the barrier to entry.
Significantly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it's that specialization within the model that creates the resilience and the scalability we see.
So how does that specialization work? How does it make them so robust? It's basically a criminal supply chain built on modularity. If you remove one component, the whole assembly line doesn't just collapse. It adapts, replaces the piece. We typically see 3 core roles, and each one kind of insulates the others from risk. Okay, role number 1.
First, you've got the RaaS operator. Think of them as the corporate HQ, like Lockbit themselves. Their job is purely R&D, developing the malware, constantly updating it, maintaining the anonymous command and control servers, the C2 infrastructure, and the private payment portals.
So they build and run the platform.
Exactly. Their profit comes from leasing this platform out and taking a commission, usually around 20% to 30% of every successful ransom paid by the affiliates using their tool.
Okay, so who's the affiliate then?
The RaaS affiliate. This is your operational force on the ground, so to speak. The gig worker, in the Uber analogy, they're the ones who actually select and profile the victims, gain the initial access. Often they buy that access from someone else.
Oh, okay.
Then they deploy the customized malware payload provided by the operator, and they handle the often intense psychological battle of negotiating the ransom with the victim.
So they do the dirty work.
They do the dirty work, and they take the primary operational risk of getting caught. But they're rewarded for it with the biggest slice of the pie, typically getting 70% to 80% of the final ransom payment.
Wow, okay, 70 to 80%. And the third role, you mentioned buying access.
Right.
That's the third specialist. The initial access broker, or IAB. These actors focus exclusively on one thing: breaching corporate networks. They find vulnerabilities, exploit them, gain a foothold, and then they sell that validated entry point. Like, what kind of entry point?
Could be working VPN credentials, valid remote desktop protocol, RDP access, maybe a pre-compromised web shell sitting on a server. They sell it for a quick flat fee. They monetize the initial intrusion risk, and then they're out. They exit the supply chain immediately.
So if law enforcement busts a key affiliate, the operator doesn't really lose much. They still have the platform, the malware.
Exactly. The operator just onboards the next contractor, the next affiliate, who pays that reported $500 Bitcoin entry fee to join Lockbit's supposedly more exclusive club now. The core criminal enterprise itself continues, largely uninterrupted.
That is inherent resilience.
Wow. And what makes this whole thing run so smoothly? You mentioned the RaaS affiliate portal. The descriptions make it sound terrifyingly professional, like a legit software as a service platform, but for crime.
That's precisely what it is. It's a business in a box designed for high-volume, efficient extortion. Let's walk through what that looks like.
Yeah, paint a picture for us. What's on this dashboard?
Okay, so the core feature is usually this slick, pretty intuitive dashboard. This is where the affiliate manages their whole portfolio of active attacks. They can see real-time stats, maybe an active infection map showing where their victims are, a running tally of how many files they've encrypted on a target network.
So instant feedback. Gamification almost. Yeah, it provides that psychological affirmation that their, quote, operation is working. Then you've got the customization tools, designed to be super easy, no coding needed.
Okay, like what?
The malware builder. It's typically just a simple web form. The affiliate clicks boxes, fills in fields. They specify the ransom amount they want, often demanding Monero now for better privacy.
Right. Harder to trace than Bitcoin.
Much harder. They customize the text that goes into the ransom note, maybe specify particular file types they really want to target for encryption, or even set a delay timer so the malware waits before starting, maybe launching overnight or on a weekend for maximum impact.
And then they just click generate.
Click generate, and the portal spits out a unique, heavily obfuscated executable payload ready for them to deploy. This low-friction customization is really what allows them to scale the damage so effectively across so many different affiliates and victims.
Okay, so the malware is deployed. Then what? How do they manage the actual attack?
Right. Once it's deployed and running on a victim's machine, it calls home to the operator's C2 server. That activates the affiliate's dedicated C2 panel on the portal.
Mission control,
There's
basically, yeah. From there, the affiliate can manage the intrusion remotely. They can try to escalate privileges, move laterally through the network, disable more security tools, and prepare for that strategic masterstroke that really revolutionized the entire ransomware industry a few years back.
This called
Double extortion.
Oh, yes.
Stealing the data before encrypting it. That fundamentally changed the game, didn't it? Especially for companies who thought they were safe because they had good backups.
Completely changed the calculus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suddenly, even if you have perfect air-gapped backups and you can restore your systems pretty quickly, the threat shifts. It's no longer just about operational disruption, which is bad enough.
It becomes about the data itself.
Exactly. The threat becomes catastrophic reputational damage, massive regulatory fines, think GDPR, IPA, CCPA, and almost guaranteed customer lawsuits, because the affiliate is holding your sensitive data hostage. Your employee PII, your customer records, your secret intellectual property.
And the threat is, pay us or we leak it all online.
Pay us or we publish everything on our public leak site for the world to see. That data leakage threat is the core leverage point now.
Okay, so we can see how this maps onto the classic cyber kill chain framework, right?
Mm.
How does that double extortion sequence typically play out after they get that initial access, maybe bought from an IAB?
Yeah, it follows a pretty methodical path. After reconnaissance identifies the target, maybe some weak points, the affiliate uses those purchase credentials or exploits a vulnerability for initial access. Then they focus on escalation, trying to get higher privileges, often aiming for domain admin by exploiting an unpatched server or a misconfiguration.
Get the keys to the kingdom.
Right. Then comes persistence they need to make sure they can stay in. So they might create hidden administrative accounts, schedule the malicious tasks to run periodically, ensuring their remote C2 connection stays alive even if the machine reboots.
Okay, access secured, persistence established. Then comes the data theft. Then comes the crucial, often resource-intensive step, data exfiltration. Before they encrypt anything, the affiliate uses tools, often provided through the RaaS platform, to scan the network's file servers. They're looking for keywords like finance, HR, client data, confidential, intellectual property, targeting the good stuff.
Targeting the most sensitive stuff. And then they rapidly steal it, often terabytes of data, pulling it out over encrypted channels back to servers they control.
Okay, data stolen. Then comes the encryption hammer.
Then comes the final blow. The encryption payload is launched, locking up the files. And that's when the chilling ransom note appears, often replacing the desktop wallpaper, maybe dropped as text files everywhere.
And the note makes that double thread explicit, demanding Monero. Absolutely explicit. The tone is usually aggressive, urgent, something like, your network has been penetrated. We have not only encrypted your critical data, rendering your business operations useless, but we have also downloaded X terabytes of your sensitive files. Naming the stolen goods. Yeah, often mentioning specific types. Proprietary designs, employee PII, customer financial records. Then the threat. If we do not reach a financial agreement within 72 hours, this data will be published on our public leak site. Contact us via secure channel. Payment is required in Monero, XMR. The demand for Monero, again, is deliberate. Its privacy features make tracing those funds exponentially harder for law enforcement and forensic firms compared to Bitcoin. You mentioned negotiation scripts earlier when talking about affiliates. What kind of psychological pressure do those scripts apply? Is it just about the money, or do they really weaponize that fear of data leaks, regulatory fines, lawsuits?
Oh, it's a sophisticated blend of all three, absolutely. The scripts are often designed to apply maximum pressure right from the start. They might open with an arbitrarily high ransom demand, way more than they expect to get, just to anchor the victim's negotiation team to a huge number.
Set the bar high.
Exactly. Then they explicitly weaponize the regulatory risk. They'll say things like, we see files here marked GDPR sensitive, or we have patient records subject to IPA, really trying to increase the internal panic within the victim's C-suite and legal team.
Playing on their biggest fears.
Precisely. And when the victim's negotiator stalls, maybe claiming it's hard to get millions in Monero quickly, the affiliate script tells them to push back hard, point to the ticking clock on the leak site, emphasize the irreversible consequences of the data going public. Their goal isn't always the absolute maximum possible ransom. It's often about securing a large, guaranteed payout as quickly as possible before the victim maybe finds another solution or law enforcement gets too involved.
But paying doesn't actually guarantee safety, does it? The sources seem pretty clear on that. Paying isn't a magic bullet.
No, absolutely not. Paying is often just the beginning of a much longer, more expensive nightmare. Victims frequently report getting faulty decryptors from the attackers that only partially restore data, forcing them back into another round of negotiation or expensive data recovery efforts.
So you pay, And the key doesn't even work properly.
It happens all the time. Or worse, even if the decryption works, they're now marked in the criminal underground databases as a company that's willing to pay.
Ah, a soft target.
A confirmed payer, which makes them an easy, high-value target for the same group or other RaaS affiliates to hit again just months later with a second round of extortion. Paying offers no real guarantees. And, this entire RaaS business model, this whole ecosystem, it relies completely on financial systems that are easy to use, hard to trace, and quick to liquidate. So we need to shift focus a bit now to that side of things, the massive systemic reliance on digital assets.
Crypto.
Right.
Yeah.
How it fuels organized crime, state-level sanctions evasion, all sorts of illicit activity, often by exploiting those regulatory gray areas that still exist. Exactly. Let's start with that state-level angle, maybe focusing on Russia, as the intelligence reports outline some sophisticated workarounds they're using to dodge sanctions.
Okay. How are they using crypto to get around sanctions?
Well, after the broad international sanctions hit, Russian actors, both state-sponsored and criminal groups, urgently needed ways to access hard currency like US dollars and also to buy foreign goods they couldn't get through normal channels anymore.
Right. Cut off from the global financial system.
Pretty much. So they've leveraged cryptocurrency to bridge that gap. Specifically, the reports mention using foreign-issued prepaid virtual credit cards, VCCs. These aren't normal credit cards, they're virtual ones you can load up using crypto, often stablecoins like USDT Tether.
Okay, so crypto in, usable dollars out.
Instantly, yeah. The crypto acts as this immediate, relatively untraceable bridge to fiat access. Once loaded, these VCCs can be used to pay for things online internationally wherever card payments are accepted.
And the regulatory gap, how are they exploiting that?
Critically, these transactions often exploit loopholes or weaknesses in the compliance processes of the card issuers, who might be based in jurisdictions with looser regulations. Some of these VCCs, the reports say, can be loaded with maybe up to $1,000, and crucially, often require minimal or sometimes completely non-existent Know Your Customer, KYC, verification.
So they can get these cards anonymously.
Effectively anonymously, yeah. Making it nearly impossible for law enforcement to definitively attribute the spending back to a specific sanctioned individual or entity in Russia and to get actual physical goods delivered. They use reshippers.
E-shippers, like mail forwarding.
Exactly. Specialized mail forwarding services. The goods are bought online from foreign retailers using these crypto-backed VCCs, shipped first to a warehouse in a friendly intermediary country, then repackaged and finally forwarded on to Russia. It completely bypasses traditional banking oversight and sanctions compliance checks on the initial purchase.
Wow. Okay, that ties crypto crime directly to geopolitics.
Uh-huh.
And speaking of state actors, North Korea's Lazarus Group, they're basically running cyber offense like a military operation, right? Funding the state through massive theft.
The scale there is genuinely terrifying. Yeah. The DPRK operates this huge government-run cyber program. Estimates put it around 6,800 trained personnel.
6,800.
Yeah. And top officials like the U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor Ann Neuberger have stated publicly how serious this is. Roughly half of North Korea's entire nuclear missile program development has apparently been funded by cyber attacks and cryptocurrency theft.
Half. Funded by hacking.
It's become a core economic pillar for the regime, enabling them to bypass sanctions and fund prohibited weapons programs.
And their big target in the crypto space recently has been these blockchain bridges, right?
Yeah. Bridges have become a prime target. These are the platforms that allow users to move assets between different blockchains, say from Ethereum to Solana or vice versa.
Why are they such a target?
Well, technically, they often present a larger and more complex cyber attack surface compared to attacking just a single, more established blockchain. There's more code, more interaction points, more potential for vulnerabilities. And Lazarus is allegedly the main group behind over $1 billion stolen just from bridge hacks.
$1 billion. From bridges?
Well, think of the huge Harmony bridge hack or the massive Axie Infinity Ronin bridge hack. That one was $650 million alone. Lazarus exploits vulnerabilities, often in the smart contracts governing these bridges, and then they use sophisticated laundering techniques, often involving DeFi protocols and mixers like the now-sanctioned Tornado Cash, to try and wash the stolen funds and make them untraceable across multiple chains.
Okay, so that's the state-level massive theft side. But let's pivot back maybe to the more local side of illicit finance. The sources talk about the explosive growth of physical crypto ATMs or BTMs right here in the U.S. The numbers are huge, but so are the concerns about how they're being used.
Yeah, the growth has been absolutely explosive. Bitcoin ATMs and other retail cash to crypto services, they went from about 4,200 locations in the US back in 2020 to over 29,000 by May 2023.
29,000. Wow.
And while they were initially marketed as a way to reach the unbanked, provide access, the blockchain forensic reports are painting a much more disturbing picture. A noticeable portion, as one report put it, of the funds flowing out of these cash-to-crypto locations goes directly to known nefarious destinations.
Like what?
Chainalysis research found that over 75% of the identified illicit activity involving these ATMs ultimately ended up in crypto wallets associated with darknet markets or shops selling stolen credit cards.
So they're a major on-ramp for funding dark web purchases and laundering scam proceeds. Why? What makes them so attractive for that?
It largely comes down to the variations in compliance controls, specifically KYC, Know Your Customer, and EDD enhanced due diligence across the huge number of different independent companies that operate these machines.
So it's not standardized. Not really, no. It's a patchwork. And this disparity is exactly what criminals, especially scammers, exploit to process high volumes of illicit cash quickly. Take an example from the reports. In a city like Indianapolis, a single victim of, say, a romance scam or an investment scam could be directed by the scammer to deposit tens of thousands of dollars into crypto via BTMs in a single day. How? Don't they have limits?
They do, but the limits vary. Operator A might only require a basic government ID scan for any transaction up to, say, $3,000. Operator B across town might have the same low threshold. Operator C, another limit. So the scammer just tells the victim to drive around the city, hitting multiple different BTM operators, converting large amounts of cash into crypto in $3,000 chunks with relatively minimal KYC friction at each stop.
Wow. So they just structure the deposits across different, less regulated machines.
Yeah.
That volume capability plus the speed and the lack of centralized oversight, it makes them a magnet for illicit cash, whether it's dark market money or laundering scam proceeds.
Absolutely. It maintains their appeal for illicit actors. Now, the industry is trying to respond. Operators are reportedly increasing their compliance staff, adopting sophisticated blockchain forensic tools like Chainalysis or TRM labs to monitor transactions.
But is it working?
Well, the effectiveness seems to vary dramatically. Some operators might use these tools proactively to screen wallet addresses before a transaction is allowed, trying to block transfers to known illicit destinations. But others might only use the tools reactively after an alert or a law enforcement inquiry, more for investigation than prevention. So until there are clear, standardized, and consistently enforced EDD controls across all operators, that regulatory void remains a massive advantage for the criminals using these machines.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. From the hyper-sophisticated Lockbit 5.0 code to the global financial networks enabling it all, let's try to synthesize this into some immediate actionable takeaways, especially for the defenders out there listening.
Right. Given the clear focus on ESXi and the advanced anti-forensics we discussed with Lockbit 5.0, some specific hardening measures are just critical right now, starting with the most urgent, that ESXi threat. What steps should organizations be taking, like today, to protect their virtualization infrastructure against this wave? Okay, ESXi hardening is non-negotiable, and it's urgent. 3 key things. First, you absolutely must implement offline, genuinely air-gapped backups. Backups that are physically or at least logically inaccessible from the main network if it gets compromised.
Truly offline, not just on a different server.
Truly offline. Second, deploy multi-factor authentication, MFA, not just on your regular user accounts, but specifically on the management interface for vCenter, which controls the ESXi hosts.
Lock down the control panel.
Exactly. And third, ensure that any management access to the ESXi environment itself is strictly limited, ideally only allowed through a secure, authenticated VPN connection. Given that just one successful payload execution can cripple the entire infrastructure, isolating and hardening that central management point is paramount.
Okay. And given Lockbit's success in blinding EDR tools, patching it-to-event right, using heavy obfuscation, traditional signature detection is clearly not cutting it anymore. Where do security teams need to shift their detection focus?
Yeah, traditional signature-based detection is, well, it's effectively dead against this level of sophistication. Organizations have to shift focus, and quickly, towards advanced behavioral monitoring.
Looking for suspicious actions, not just known bad files.
Exactly. You need tools and analysts looking for living-off-the-land tactics. That means spotting the malicious use of legitimate, built-in system tools that attackers love because they blend in.
Like what kind of tools?
Think about monitoring for unusual lateral movement attempts using tools like PSCZAC, or persistence being set up using the built-in Windows Task Scheduler, SHASCs, or looking for abnormal use of command line interpreters like cmd.exe or PowerShell, especially if they're being used for large data transfers, which could be exfiltration, or executing obfuscated scripts, which could be defense evasion. The attackers are counting on these actions looking normal at first glance. You need systems that understand context and can spot the anomalies.
Okay, that makes sense. Shifting focus to behavior. Now, on the more systemic front, combating the whole RaaS business model, tracking these illicit funds, that requires better coordination and, it sounds like, better data quality, too.
Absolutely. On the coordination front, public-private partnerships are essential. Organizations like the National Cyber Forensics and Training Alliance, NCFTA, play a vital role in sharing threat intelligence between industry and law enforcement. That needs to continue and expand.
And the data quality piece for law enforcement.
Yeah, law enforcement needs better, more accurate data faster. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3, is the main intake point for victim reporting, but its effectiveness relies on getting good information. The reports stress the need for better training for local law enforcement, the first responders on the scene of a digital crime. They need to know how to properly preserve digital evidence, especially things like cryptocurrency wallet addresses and transaction hashes.
Why is that so critical?
Because those hashes are often case-sensitive, they need to be captured perfectly, and speed is crucial. The success rate for tracing and potentially recovering stolen crypto funds drops precipitously, like off a cliff, usually after the first 24 to 48 hours. Getting that accurate data immediately is vital.
And related to that tracing problem, you mentioned the difficulty of following funds across different blockchains, something Lazarus exploits. Is there a proposed solution for that ambiguity?
There is. To help clear up the persistent confusion that really slows down investigations and sanctions compliance, especially when you're trying to track stolen Bitcoin that's been wrapped onto the Ethereum network. For example, there's a proposal gaining some traction for a new standardized cryptocurrency naming convention.
Okay, how would that work?
It's pretty simple, actually. The idea is to always use a token blockchain pair format. So instead of an investigator just writing BTC in a report, which could mean native Bitcoin or some wrapped version, they'd specify BTC for native Bitcoin, or BTCF if it's Bitcoin represented on the Ethereum blockchain, or maybe XMR Monero for native Monero.
Ah, so it forces clarity on which chain the asset actually lives on.
Exactly. That simple bit of added clarity could significantly reduce ambiguity in intelligence reports, help regulators enforce sanctions more accurately, and make prosecuting these complex cross-chain financial crimes much more straightforward.
It really feels like the criminal world has thoroughly professionalized, doesn't it? They're operating like these agile transnational tech companies, but for crime. Meanwhile, our legal and regulatory systems are still struggling to keep pace.
They absolutely are. And that brings us to a final, maybe provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. It's about this fundamental collision between computer code and traditional law in this new digital economy.
Okay, it raises a really deep legal question that I think will define a lot of the next decade in digital governance. What happens when the definition of a crime might actually be determined by lines of computer code rather than by laws written by humans and legislatures? How do you mean?
Well, consider decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. These are entities governed purely by software, by smart contracts running on a blockchain. When we see a DAO governance attack, like the ones that hit Build Finance or Beanstalk Farms, where millions were drained as what's actually happening.
Someone found a loophole.
Essentially, yeah. The attacker identifies a flaw, an unintended consequence, in the DAO's governing smart contract code. They then craft transactions that follow the rules written in that code, but exploit the flaw to, say, grant themselves voting power, and then vote to transfer all the DAO's treasury funds to their own wallet.
So they use the system's own rules against itself.
Exactly. The code allowed the transaction according to its own internal logic. So the really thorny question is, was that an illegal act of hacking in the traditional sense? Or was it more like a hostile corporate takeover executed entirely within the literal rules of the system as defined by its code? The code is law debate. If the code permitted it, was it actually illegal? That's the heart of it. The strict code is law argument suggests that the unambiguous logic of the algorithm should prevail, even if the outcome feels deeply unfair or violates our traditional human understanding of theft or corporate ethics. This deep legal ambiguity is really the next frontier for regulators like the SEC, the CFTC, and legal systems worldwide. We, as a society, have to figure out how to classify these actions. Is exploiting an unintended loophole in a smart contract the same as traditional fraud or theft? Or was the user just playing the game according to the rules that were written, flaws and all?
Wow.
That distinction, how we answer that question, will fundamentally shape how we regulate, prosecute, and ultimately govern the next wave of digital finance and potentially digital crime.
That is a profound and frankly pretty unsettling thought to end on. Something definitely for all of us to chew on as we think about defending against threats like Lockbit 5.0 and navigating this evolving landscape. Thank you so much for walking us through all of this complex detail today. It's been incredibly insightful.
My pleasure. It's a critical conversation to have.
Absolutely. And thank you, our listener, for tuning in to the deep dive. Stay safe out there, and please stay vigilant.